Welcome back to the Nano Reef project. As you might guess, some things have already changed. As you can see, I have some corals in there. I got them yesterday and I already had planned to pick them up yesterday, and I didn't expect the sand to take so long to get delivered, but no big deal. I just will put everything to one side, put the sand in, and move everything over to the other side. It would just be nicer if I wouldn't have to wait a week for a parcel to arrive. Okay, the other thing I have changed is I put these pins where the light rests on a little bit lower. I actually had them in the lowest position for some time, but then the tank was getting too warm, since right now we have almost 25 degrees in the room. So even though the LEDs don't put out a terrible amount of heat, it was still enough to heat it up over 27 degrees C, so that wasn't so nice. So I put it one notch higher. That works quite fine. And I also put some pins up here, so it can, like now, put the light up here when I'm working. So I still have light in the tank to work with, but I have enough clearance to get my hands in there and move things in and out. Okay, my sand has finally arrived. So what I will do now is take this and wash it a little bit with clean water, just to get the dust out. Since if you look at the bottom side of the bag, you see all this fine ground up pieces, this fine dust from shipping, and we don't want that in our tank because it will cloud up everything and take quite a while to settle down. So we'll just put this aside and cut it open. So get myself a container for the washed stuff, and now I will just rinse that off a little bit. Actually, the stuff that comes from the top looks quite clean. But you see, I already found a little piece of plastic in there, so that's also a reason why we're doing this. Okay, so I just try to pour off a little more of the water that is collected in there. Okay. Now I got myself some water from the tank, since if we're putting this sand in there, it will displace some water, so I have to take some out anyway, and so I will just pour that on, mix it around, and pour it off again, and that way we will not bring that much fresh water, which is still sticking to the sand, in there, and our density will not change that much. And this looks plenty. But still finding some plastic pieces, so I will pour that off. Okay, so I'm done draining off most of the water. Actually, since now it's salt water, it's not that critical. This is the amount of plastic bits that I extracted there by washing. Actually, looking at this, I guess they come from some big plastic bags or something. Probably they're not from the origin of the sand. They are probably went in there during transport, but still, at least that's a reason to wash it. Even there wasn't that much dust, you want to get that shit out of there. So throw that away and back to the tank. Okay, so we're back at the tank with our freshly washed sand. So I will now move some things around and out of the way. Okay, so far I think I'm happy with that side. Of course I don't want to put too much in there. Don't fill up the whole tank with sand, and now carefully put that back. Looks quite nice. So now just have to put the corals back where they came from. Actually get some of that sand off there. I didn't glue anything in place yet because actually I don't really like using glue inside the tank, and I thought it might be better to leave it loose for now so I can easily put it in another position if I realize that it's not the perfect spot. So just smoothing out this a little bit, and just let me straighten out this. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So let's power up the pump again and give it some time to clear up. A few days have passed, and as you may be able to tell, there are some more frags. First of all, I got this torch coral, so that's officially my first LPS coral. It might be a little bit early to put stony corals in there, but the torch coral is really easy care, and water quality looks good, so I guess she is going to make it. Got various discs there, and rest is still the same, but also I got some snails, might be hard to see there, and some crabs. One is up there, the other ones are probably hiding somewhere and eating algae. So far the tank is running fine. Water quality looks good. I'm not 100% happy with the way the surface skinner works. I'm still trying to tweak that a little bit. I have a other idea in mind to modify that I might show you in the next video. But all in all, I'm quite happy. One thing I'm definitely going to change is I will put more blue LEDs on top here. So remember that I told you that I have like 5 meters. I guess I put all of them up there, 5 meters of the blue stuff, and then just these 3 bars of white light. But because really what I found out, the more blue the better it looks, at least to me. And the corals for sure could use some more light, especially of course the LPS type needs some more light than the others. Not as quite as much as the SPS, but still I guess I want to give it a little more. So I just want to give you a short impression how my routine maintenance looks like. Right now there's not much to do. Right now I didn't clean the sides. It might be necessary like next week or something. You can slowly see some algae building up, but the big snails are actually eating away quite a lot of algae. 2 days ago when I put them in, all the white spots on the rock were covered in brown algae, so they eat up all the algae in like 2 days. So I guess they are going to keep the glass clean too, and I will not have to deal with that much. So what I do right now, every like 3 days that about, I check the salt concentration and I check the hardness and the nitrite concentration, which basically should be 0. I also sometimes check the nitrates, but that's quite constant, and the nitrate is not that critical. If the nitrates get really high, you see that some of the corals, especially the one in the back, I'm not so familiar with the English names, I have to look them up, will start turning brown, and then I would definitely check. But right now, since there's no fish in, there's not much sources of nitrates. Okay, so quite easily I have myself a graduated cylinder to put the hydrometer in. With a bigger tank you could actually put it in the tank. Here I don't have enough height, but it will be more accurate if you do it outside the tank. If you want to do it in the tank, it's also okay, but switch off all the pumps, otherwise that will definitely screw up your measurement. Then I just take myself a small beaker and get in here and get like 70 or 80 milliliters and pour them into my cylinder. Yeah, something like 70 is enough to prevent it from overflowing, and then I will drop the hydrometer in. Okay, to get an accurate reading out of a hydrometer, as I said, get yourself some water into a separate container, and then give it some like half a minute or a minute to stabilize so it's not moving anymore. And of course make sure that it can move freely in the cylinder. It's pointless when it's stuck. And then don't look for the highest spot where the water is on the scale. Look through the surface of the water, through that line. And so here I'm reading 1.021 grams per milliliter. So that's a little bit on the low side. Still in the green area, it's still fine, but so I know when I fill up water the next time, since I'm always losing something due to evaporation, I add salt water instead of fresh water, and then that will bring it up a little bit. Since you're not only losing water due to evaporation, of course every time you put your hand in there and take it out again, some water stays on your hand, so you're carrying salt water out that way. But really, it's not that critical. And now after I checked for the salt concentration, I just take that water that I already have in there to perform my carbonate hardness test and my NO2 test. Okay, so I put some of the water in my two small containers that came with the test set. Also here, same story like the hydrometer. To get an accurate reading of the volume, you don't look for the highest point where the water is, you look for the basically look through the surface, since it's always climbing up the walls a little bit due to surface tension, so that's a little bit misleading. So basically you look for the level the water is in the middle of the container. So that's why also on camera I guess it looks like I have a little bit too much, but I checked it. But also the instruction of the test set will tell you that. I'm using the test kit from Sarah, but it's up to you what you choose. I think it's quite a nice kit. These glass containers seem to be good quality. The instructions are good, and it's a quite fair price. But really, that's up to you, whatever you use. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is using these test strips. Doesn't matter if these are the JBL, so they're reasonable quality, but still they're quite inaccurate, especially in salt water. I used them for some time on fresh water, but most times they give proper results. Sometimes I had some errors with the pH, for example, and a proper test kit will not be that much more expensive than the test strip. Especially you can carry out a lot more tests with the liquid like drop test that we will perform here. So first I will do the hardness. As I said, check the instructions of your test kit, but in my case you're putting in one drop of it at a time, and you should actually ends up in the water, and you keep adding until you see a color change, and you count the drops, and that will equal your degree of carbon hardness. In my case it's degrees of the German scale. We'll add some more because you basically know what region you're looking for, so you don't have to count every single drop. I basically put 6 or 7 in and then start checking drop wise. Since we're looking for about 8, I know that I'm a little bit higher since I used tap water when I mixed up the salt water. I think I will continue doing that, but right at the edge, so now it's definitely changed to yellow, so it's around 13 degrees of carbon hardness, which is definitely on the high side, but that's not that a big deal. So for the nitrate test, yeah, again, refer to the manual. In my case, there are 2 test reagents. It's labeled 1 and 2. Add 5 drops of the first one, shake it, add 5 drops of the second one, and then you can compare the color to the scale. Okay, so we put 5 drops in there, shaking it around a little bit. Adding 5 drops in there. And actually that's what I didn't want to see. That's actually quite high. Okay, so that's definitely too high. So I'm going to also perform a nitrate test, so NO3, and look where that's at. Since having the NO2 high basically means that there is not enough bacteria converting the NO2 to NO3, which can be a result of just not having enough bacteria in there yet, or having too much organic waste in there. But really there shouldn't be that much waste, so I will check that, and then I will see how I continue. Okay, so I just performed the NO3 test, and it's around 15 milligrams per liter, so that definitely tells me that there's some organic waste rotting in there. Maybe it's all the algae that the snails have eaten and now shitting out, or it's something in the rock dying. But yeah, it's definitely too much. I will just perform a partial water change and keep an eye on how it develops. Just to give you an idea how misleading these test stripes can be. Basically, the NO3 it comes to about the same result. It's somewhere between 10 and 25. But if you look for the NO2, there is definitely a result, but I don't know if it will show up on camera, but it's around the 0.5, and between 0.5 and 1 milligram per liter for something like NO2, which is quite toxic, that's a big difference. And yeah, the carbonate hardness is like 10 degrees off, and It shows a pH around 8. That's about what it is, so that's fine. But especially for these nitrogen related things, you see how inaccurate they are, and that's basically the most important. Yeah, so I will just do a partial water change and keep an eye on that. Okay, I will use that opportunity to show you how I do my water changes. I have myself a measuring cup for 2 liters, so that's quite convenient. I just put 70 grams of salt in there, or I will actually put a little bit more since the salt concentration was a little bit on the low side. Normally I would only change 2 liters, that's about 10%. It's actually a little bit more since the rock and so on are displacing some water. I will now do 4 liters, so that's like 25% or something, and then I will check tomorrow morning how the values look and maybe do another water change. So we'll just repeat this procedure twice that I'm now planning here. So I zeroed out the scale, and now I will just put like 70 grams in there. Yeah, 77, that's fine. As I said, the salt concentration was a little bit on the low side anyway. So close that bucket up. Always keep your salt nice sealed up, otherwise it will pull some water to it, and that will make it clump together. And then of course the weight will be inaccurate since you're weighing some of the absorbed water. And I got myself a jug of water. Now I'm using it actually says distilled water, but it's coming from my reverse osmosis filtration. I might show you that in the future. I scored that off eBay for 15 bucks including shipping, and it's in good shape. It's a really small system. It only can do something like 50 liters a day, but for a tank of that size I don't really care. If you have 600 liters, then that would be a little bit annoying waiting like 6 days or something like this to fill it up. Okay, so now I will just fill this up. Actually, I wouldn't really need a measuring cup. I also could just fill that up by weight when I have it on the scale anyway. And actually it's more accurate to fill it up by weight, since the salt you put in there will displace some water. So the reading now, even though we have put in 2000 grams of water, is a little bit above the 2000 milliliter mark, but really it's not that critical. And we'll just stir that around a little bit, give it some time to dissolve. While it's dissolving, we will take out 4 liters of the tank. And to get the water out of the tank, I just again get myself a measuring cup that's a little bit smaller. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to really reach in there, and I just look for removing about 2 liters of or 4 liters of water in this case, and actually turn off the pump because it will pull air anyway. So the first one was 1.2. It's again about 1.2, so it's 2.4. 3.4. Yeah, nailed it. 4 liters. Okay, same story like when we set up the tank. With the modern salts, there's no need to wait a few days before you can use your water. Just wait for it to everything dissolve, and it should completely clear up. And I just dropped in the hydrometer and checked the density. Now it's around like 1.024, so that's quite a bit higher than what I have in the tank, so that will bring that up a little bit. I will pour it in slowly to prevent shocking the corals, since you always should change the water conditions slowly. Rather have them in bad conditions for 2 or 3 days than drastically changing it. Most times that's worse than having them sitting in bad conditions. Okay, to prevent making a mess and throwing around the sand everywhere, what I typically do is just pouring it into the top of the pump, so it's not directly hitting the ground. That's the first half, and just gonna mix up some more, repeat the process. Okay, here goes the second batch. And right now I'm not too concerned about the temperature, because the heater wasn't turning on for the last days. We have around 25 or 24 degrees in the house, so there basically is no temperature differential. So now I have filled it up. I will place my sticker in the proper location, so I know. I just always mark the water level. Then if evaporation happens, I just can fill up with fresh water until this mark, and I know the concentration will be about right. So let's turn the pump back on, and I will check the water tomorrow and see how it changes.